Eventually, like nobody would code. And so eventually everyone would forget coding and everyone, because people are moving up in the stack. So people would go for system design. So everyone will be good at system.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alex.
And my name is OP.
Welcome to AI on Fire, the show where ideas spark, code burns, and the future of AI takes shapes through the people behind it.
Every fire needs heat, fuel, and oxygen. Control those, and you shape the flame. That's how we think about AI. Not something to contain, but something we all learn to steer.
And today, we're doing something different. Instead of focusing on a company story, we wanted to talk about how AI is changing the job of software engineers and the skills that matter. Our guest is Subrat Prasad, a founding engineer who previously worked at Google and Amazon, and he is sharing some insightful thoughts on why AI won't replace engineers, but will change how they work. Welcome, Subrat. Great to have you here.
Glad to be here on the show. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, let's get to our first section, the spark, origin, and mindset. You've been inside engineering cultures at Google and Amazon. I think two places that actually shape the modern tech culture and ecosystem, right? What experiences there influenced how you think about AI and AI engineering overall?
Well, like these big tech companies, like one of the big things that I realized since being there for so long is, anyone who gets into the system, they are already, like as an engineer, they're already good at like coding. So coding is never the bottleneck. The bottleneck comes from, dealing with ambiguity, dealing with, get clarifying business problems and aligning it across like cross functionals. So those are some of the biggest challenges that these big tech try to kind of like shape into some kind of processes, and then they have so many processes. And then at the end of the day, like coding is just like a tool to kind of like get solve these business problems. So the biggest takeaway for me there was kind of you know solving those problems at higher level where you get the alignment, you get the clarity. So those are kind of like the biggest learnings for me from a big tech.
All right, makes sense.
Yeah. And, your post talk about engineering the people problem, and you just reemphasize that, alignment, clarity, communication, and it's just more than a code. Where did that perspective come from?
It kind of like, yeah, it goes back to like what I just said about you need those clarity, like when you're solving problems, these problems are often very ambiguous. So then you need that clarity of like what we are actually solving for. And when you actually go on that quest of solving those problems, and there are like multiple hierarchies, there are so many groups, so many individuals involved, the main challenge becomes like, uh, getting an alignment from everyone. And when you get, try to work on those alignments, there are people you deal with often. And then when you deal with people, often, there are some, you know, close to the heart, principles that often kind of like come to conflict. And then how do you resolve those conflicts? So at the end of the day, like when I think about it at a bigger scale, it becomes like, you are most of the time dealing with people, trying to solve those conflicts, trying to get them on board with the solution. And so that's where like, that's kind of like on the alignment piece. And then there is the other piece of like communication, I think, you know, um, whether it is like upward or downward, it kind of a slight difference in the communication. I see it as like, even if it deviates like 1%, and because these organizations are so big, the ripple effect is kind of like just compounds, and it results in a catastrophe. So I think that's where I feel like it's more like a human thing, less of a coding or like actual anything that has to do with algorithms or, computer science.
Let me actually reflect this to AI, right? So you mentioned that there is a lot of conflicts and sometimes people don't understand you, right? Sometimes the message is not received. I play with AI a lot. And I think it's the same issue that I'm having with all Copilot's AI agents. They're not constant. They're not getting the right responses all the time. They're hallucinating a lot. And I always yell at them, stupid machines. So I'm having the conflicts with AI agents. So what's your perspective on this and your experience probably?
That's definitely true. I think this is like this goes back to like I think the current state of the AI, which is generative AI, and it always has its own limitations around like context windows. I don't know if you guys noticed, but like recently, yesterday itself, OpenAI launched 5.2 GPT. Uh, if you saw the performance graph there, like the context window at least is better. As you grow the context window, it still kind of like delivers good results. But even then, I feel like because it does not have these all context, the problem just amplifies you. The problem of hallucination, you know, 1 hour of chat with an AI agent, it just you makes you very frustrated when they you ask them to like build, hey, give me feature A, and they will say, hey, you know what, like I think feature B and C can also be like very useful for you. So take this. Now you go back, keep deleting those features, and you ask them to like, one of the biggest problem that I see, like whenever I ask them, even though I have these cursor rules, I use cursor a lot. They would always write a big comment, which is often redundant. Then I have to ask them, hey, please don't write comment. They always generate readme for me, and I'm like, I don't need readme for every other thing. Now my half of my code base is like readmes if I just allowed you to keep writing readme for me. So those are like very frustrating problems, and in a way, if you think about it from like human perspective, these frustration also build up to kind of like stress. So there is like the whole human angle as well to dealing with AI, which is there, and I think nobody kind of like talks about that.
Yeah, yeah. And to close this section, where we explore Sparks, how everything started, etc. And you made a huge move. Like many people from enterprise might be dreaming about that. You become a founding engineer. Yeah, you move from a big tech to a founding engineer role. And interesting if you can give us more lights, what motivated that shift, like leaving the comfort zone of enterprise and yeah, start a new journey like that.
I think the biggest one for me was the kind of freedom that you can get, to be able to like hold or own the end-to-end process. Like when you join, to give some background, like we are a very small startup. We are like just 5 to 10 people. So pretty much everything is on our hands. Like if I just don't work or slack one day, it's almost like a fire on the house next day. One of the features doesn't get delivered. So you can really see the impact directly on the customers. The users start complaining about things on Telegram. So those are kind of like one of the, I would say, you see your impact directly as you keep working on it. Whereas that feedback loop, if you are in big tech, is like very long. Like often it takes like 5, 6 months to a year to kind of like deliver these results, and also to be able to be in the control of like you get that decision making, and you also control your kind of fate, so to say.
Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. And speaking about the changes, right? So you made a change, you switch, and AI is changing a lot, right? So there is a huge transformation on the market right now. So from your perspective, how well are those changes received? So obviously, what is changing for engineers, and what changes are received well, and what like doesn't?
I think from change perspective, it has changed for different level of engineers. Like it has changed for differently. If I categorize those engineers from like entry level to more senior to eng leaders, these changes have been perceived differently, and the way AI actually helps them is very different. Like for a junior engineer, it would be more like they see today it as a threat. This is like most of the time when I talk to these early eng or even college grads, they are like, hey, is AI going to take my job? Like, would I even get a job? And it's a truth that a lot of there's definitely scarcity of jobs in the market. They always like if you see like in last 2 to 3 years there have been job cuts. So it's definitely like is is a moment of like anxiety for these early engineers, um, because they just don't know, like they spend so much money and time and energy to kind of like learn something, and then now there is like no job for them. Whereas I think for the more senior folks and like, people who are experienced in the industry, it has, to a lot of people, it has perceived well in the sense that they can, you know, earlier it was a challenge for them to kind of like try on new ideas, prototype. But now these people have this ability to kind of like, even if you're not like a good coder, you can just go build a prototype, take it to VC. So you can see your ideas coming into life. So to some extent that has perceived been perceived pretty well. And the amount of like, the startups growing in Silicon Valley or even in like New York, I see like, it's kind of like just skyrocketing.
Yes, that's interesting. And also, like to talk more about use cases that you previously mentioned, or maybe you can give like anything else. But like you mentioned, for example, that they can generate tests, but they cannot, fix the bug if it doesn't understand the bug, And maybe what other blind spot make you cautious about, uncritical AI adoption or anything like that. So maybe you can give us more on that.
So one of the things in my experience I've noticed about like those AI blind spots is hallucination, which kind of like, again, kind of, it's not a blind spot, I would say, but it's more like a problem where it just knows too much. It's not that it doesn't know things, it just knows too much. So it's very hard for us to keep that AI on track with, within the lanes, because it knows too much. As I was explaining earlier, like you ask them to build them, like, hey, give me feature A, but they would also build you feature B and C, which is not related, which is not required. And then this is just one module of the system. Let's say from engineering perspective, if we are talking about like, a product where at least there are a couple of microservices, how do you keep that consistent across, different microservices, let's say, or that engineering standards and practice? Like, how do you keep that in a particular lane? It's just too hard because they know too much. That's one of the challenges that I've faced pretty often, and it kind of like goes back to like, saying that it becomes frustrating after a while that I have to just keep giving them like more context, and they're just thirsty of context.
Let's probably spend a little bit more time talking about it, right? So I think you talk about the missing context, and at the same time, like LLMs, they know too much, right? Because they're huge. Probably we could talk about small language models, like AI agents that are specifically trained to work with those small language models. But I would love to hear your perspective on, first of all, how to reduce the amount of hallucination, right? Better prompting or something else, or how to reduce the amount of things that mislead the model or agent.
I think like one of the ways, as you said, like is definitely like, better prompting, but that's also like a very wide open space where like it's more like an experimentation and see what sticks, what doesn't stick. And I think it's also like that feedback loop is kind of not every company, of course, big tech can do that, but like for startups like us, like they don't really have that much bandwidth to allocate. So like some of the things that actually help is, and I was reading an article from one of the AWS engineers around this. What they tried doing was like they tried to rebuild a system called Bedrock. They initially, like without AI, they kind of like came up with an estimate of like a year, that it would take us like almost like a year to kind of like be at feature parity. And then they built like, they remodeled everything and using like, we're going to use AI, and they actually delivered that in like 75 days. And they talked about like what are the things that they did well about, when they used AI. One of the things they mentioned was, keep everything in place, like, from core engineering. Like if I go into more technical details, like they use like monorepo instead of like microservices. Everyone knows Amazon is heavily on microservices, but they kind of like, and distributed repos, but they put everything in like monorepo. They kind of like, every decision that they made, they kind of like put it back in the repo. Every changes that they're doing, so in a way, what they're trying to do is like they have the intent, but now the next thing that sits below intent is the context. And they kind of like keep feeding back the context into the system. And that in a way like helps in keeping the AI into the lane. And I think, but I think that only works for like big companies of who can afford uh, to kind of like. I haven't really experimented that personally. Something that I actually want to do.
I just want to share a couple of perspectives that we're doing. So, and this actually concerns me a little bit. So, what we're doing, we have prompt files now with some tables, formats, and examples there. So, we actually use Copilot to work with those prompt files. And we're doing the prompt coding. So, we create prompt files, which we publish into GitHub repos so other people can use it. And then Copilot actually hallucinate when we're using the prompt files with defined formats in them. So, we're just becoming the prompt engineers, unfortunately, right? So we try to get out of it, but that's what's happening. And get it to the next level, what we're doing, we're asking Copilots to generate from files for us. And then we just use those from files for the same Copilot. But that's just what I'm doing. And that works for me, actually. So it concerns me. It works.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I think that's also one thing that like we started doing is like we started putting like more cursor rules, which kind of like works across the team. And then we encourage everyone to kind of like, let's start doing this, putting like a common context for across the team. So that definitely helps with hallucination.
So we talked and cover challenges with using AI, etc. And let's flip it right now and talk about what excites you most. About how AI can actually elevate engineering.
I think one of the biggest thing that I think about this is the exploration cost. I think that kind of like for any, and this is mostly like true for people who are like experimenting, like try to or want to experiment like every new idea that they come to their mind. It can also be a trap, but like that cost of exploration has lowered by far. By it like the most. Um, I can like anything that comes to my mind, I can just go and prototype like real quick. That's one of the biggest one. The other thing again, I feel like is like AI has given us this generative AI has given us like more like a brainstorming partner. So a lot of time, often like I just don't have clarity around like what you know there will be some idea that this can increase our users. But then I just don't know if that will work or not. So I still need somebody to be critical. And I've seen like, AI can be really critical and it can be like, very, if you just prompt them to be like ruthless, they can really be a badass, I would say.
but
I
it's
don't know.
really easy to change their mind, right? So now you're wrong. All right, so I'm wrong. Sorry about it. All right, so let's get to the fire drill. So for fire drill, we have 10 questions, pretty short answers, one sentence each. Let's keep it short. If you're ready, let's set it up. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go.
All right, so I will start. AI replacing engineers. Is it myth or slow truth?
I would say myth.
All right. What's the harder skill in the future? System design or coding?
I would say coding because eventually like nobody would code. And so eventually everyone would forget coding and everyone, because people are moving up in the stack. So people would go for system design. So everyone will be good at system design.
Learn system design now.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So another one. What surprised you most working at Google?
I think the culture, the culture at scale globally that they have maintained throughout this, 20, 25 years. That's pretty amazing.
I thought free lunches or something. What surprised you the most in Amazon?
Their customer obsession. I wrote an email to Jeff Bezos saying, "Hey, this is I'm upset about customer service," and this was when after I left Amazon and I got refunded.
Uh, So, all right. So, if or when engineers evolve, what trait matters most? Judgment, communication, or system thinking?
I think communication any day. With other two skills, you can still, of course, everything can be learned, and but communication is the most important. As I was saying, that you take a detour and then it has a big cost associated.
Exactly. Talk to everyone. You'll still have to talk to AI agents, right? And do it in an obvious way, right? All right. So next question: more dangerous thing is it ignoring AI or trusting it blindly?
Oh, definitely trusting it blindly. I think it's
It's safe to eat these mushrooms, right? Oh, sorry, I was wrong.
We keep flipping, what most underrated skill in engineering teams?
I think the clarity in someone's intent, like, the clarity of intent coming from somebody uh, is often missed, and we don't appreciate enough that how clear they are, like somebody or a team or an organization is in what they want to achieve. That clarity kind of like goes a long way.
All right. So, what's one engineering habit or skill you think more people should learn?
One is definitely start writing a lot. That definitely increases your clarity. That's something I've been practicing. I think I started practicing like since last year.
All right. Next one. What's one misconception about AI plus engineering? That really bother you?
I think one of the biggest misconception is like because LLM knows too much, they know everything and they are correct, which is often more often than not like it's not correct.
All right. So, the last question here: what will differentiate strong engineers in 5 years? Technical depth, clarity of intent, or being able to understand if it's true or not, or created by AI or not?
I think the last one where the decision making of like being able to judge AI's work, where at the end of the day you are, if you are taking it into production, you are the owner, and AI clearly would know like it doesn't produce production grade results at the moment.
It's getting harder and harder to tell, right?
That's actually funny, like with the purpose of AI to give us, more clarity, but like looks like we are keep introducing more complex stuff and ambiguity, and yeah, that's interesting.
All right, so now the fire drill is over, and we're getting to the final section, forecast. So, looking about 5 years from now, what do you think all the people will be wrong about on the AI side?
I mean, one of the things could be that the way I say that AI won't replace the job, maybe I get replaced. um, uh, but I think no, I think the kind of advancements, if you see, like one of the biggest believer I am is on the Google team. Like I feel like their race to AGI, if that really happens, I feel like there will be definitely some truth to like, so these software engineering roles and like, how much impact it has on us. That's definitely can happen in 3 to 5 years.
And we
Kind
touch.
of like goes, it kind of like contradictory to what I keep saying that, it's not going to take my job.
Or AI bubble will pop up. That's it. Stock market crash, buy bullets and ammo, right?
So
Another Great Depression.
do you do you think title like software engineers itself will be there, or maybe like we will replace it with prompt engineer as we discussed, maybe system architect, AI or AI agent manager, or anything like that? So how do you feel about this one? Software engineer in the future. How we will call this person?
I'm not sure about like software engineering title getting replaced because if you think from like, 90s perspective, 90s and early 2000s, they still had these software engineering titles and we still have software engineering titles. But along the way, if you see like we grew like more titles around like web dev engineer, database engineer, and now we have like AI prompt engineers or applied AI engineers, ML engineers. So I think there will be like more of these niche categories of engineers coming out in job market. But there will still be this software engineer as a blanket category. I say so. Might still be there.
Yeah, I think it's all started with programmer, right? So because people just used to write programs, and now it's developers because you're not just writing programs, you're developing something, right? Now you're an engineer because you're not just developing, you're engineering and then developing. In future, it will be something else, right? AI master lord or something because you'll have an army of agents working for you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the last question here we have. So you have a lot of experience in your career, right? What do you think that something who is new to this game should invest into, right? So what they should start learning or probably start looking at.
I think one of the biggest regret that I have is like I didn't do a lot of like, side projects, even for fun, when I was, either in college grad or like early career. That's something I suggest everyone, like since everything is becoming so competitive and, The bar for engineers are kind of like getting raised every day. I think having side projects and showcasing it, and even if they don't have like real world impact, even for fun, like just find what is fun for you, be curious about it, and go build something, showcase it. And then I think AI, like definitely use AI for like, uh, don't miss out on like, however you can use AI. Definitely use that power of AI because it definitely accelerates you. So
All
yeah.
right. Yeah, invest in learning, right? That's all about it. I
Hey,
think it brings us to the end of the episode. OP, do you want to say something?
no, thank you so much, Subrat, for this amazing, like experience with us and jumping into flames and sharing engineering perspective with us and audience. It was great to chat with you and explore this side of the corner.
Thank you for having me. I think this is really a great experience for me to kind of like share my thoughts. It also like gives me like an opportunity to kind of like even self reflect on my thoughts. So yeah, definitely like I really enjoyed this talk.
All right, thanks. So we'll put the links to Subrat profile, LinkedIn profile in the comments on this episode, and as well as the blog post. And I think you wrote article about it, right? So we'll also put all the links down there. So go check it out. Go check it out. Subscribe, share, all the stuff. And yeah, thanks for listening. Keep questioning, keep sharing, and remember, the real fire isn't the tool; it's how we learn to use it. See you next time on the Hour Fire. Thank you.
Bye.